Peace and love. I wanted to talk about something that has been really life changing for me. If you need to, please play this at 1.5 or 1.25 speed. Checking on my mom's dog. Do you want to go inside? Okay, no, he's good for now. So, play this at 1.25 or 1.5 because I want to take my time speaking about this and really stay grounded and centered in myself as I speak on it. Because first off, the way that I feel about this experience is already going to be very different than most people's experiences. It's going to be quite controversial. Some of you will not agree with what I have to say. Some of you will be surprised by what I say. Some of you may be curious. Some of you may agree. There's going to be a different opinion because we all have different lives. We all have different experiences we're here to have. So we all have different perspectives. I simply ask that you honor mine, and if you don't have anything to say that is honorable, then don't say it. I want to speak about this because it's been something where many of those rite of passage moments that we don't really receive anymore as humans in this modern day, the rites of passage to becoming a woman, to becoming a man, to learning new levels of responsibility were things that were passed along in tribes and tribal settings. And this experience for me felt like a rite of passage. It felt like an initiation. Now, a lot of what I believe creates the intricacies of this moment for me getting baptized. And to kind of just make a long story shorter, my sister last year in October or November, I believe. I think it was October of last year, she got baptized. And I remember she asked everyone, hey, I'm getting baptized, I'd like for you to come. My relationship with God has always kind of been just, I guess, more personal than structured and indoctrinated. I've always been told about Jesus, about Yeshua is how I call him, because that's how you'd pronounce his name in his culture. I've always been told about Yeshua as a child and what he did for humans here on earth. I believed in him. I didn't feel that I was ever going to be punished if I didn't. I just believed in a higher power, a higher source. I believe in the universe, spirit, God. Those are some of my personal beliefs on my walk on earth this lifetime around. And I remember receiving the gift of tongues in church when I was around 16 years old. I remember having special moments by myself with God, universe, source. I remember being introduced to angels in my 25th or 26th year of life while working at a crystal shop, and really started to understand that they work hand in hand with us very deeply here on earth. So I became more connected with angels. I became more connected with things that I didn't ever think I would because of some of the people that I had met who were very hardcore Christian. I guess I shouldn't say hardcore, but maybe just hard Christians. A lot less heart-centered lovingness in their hearts and more judgment. And so I was kind of just I'll just stick to my own personal practices. I'll just stick to that. And since I've been living here with my mother and my sister, I've been attending their church, which I actually really do enjoy. And the pastor who speaks there is of a different generation than I'm used to seeing speak. And so I think he's able to bring more modern day assistance to humans that go there. And he definitely channels. But my sister goes to get baptized. We're all there, and I'm watching this experience, and it's beautiful. And seeing her get baptized, I got really emotional. I was really crying, and I was like, this is so beautiful. And I remember talking to my mom. I was like, wow, so we've all been baptized now? And then she was like, you're not baptized. And I was like, what? She's like, no. And I have some vivid memory, I swear, when I was a little baby, of my mom and dad taking me and having water poured over my head, but apparently that wasn't me. She's like, no, you never got baptized. And I was like, what? I don't know, for whatever reason, for me it felt like I want that. I want to do that. And so I was very surprised when she told me that I wasn't. And then I kind of just sat with that for a little bit. I didn't go too deep into it, but around this same time, I had recently purchased a book called The Magdalene Mysteries. And so, to kind of weave in the part that's going to be a little more controversial, that some people won't agree with and I'm okay with, it doesn't have to be your truth. Take it or leave it. I had been introduced to Mary Magdalene as a person outside of church. I never learned about her through church, thankfully, so I didn't already have this preconceived programming of who she was in my mind. And the first time I heard her name was actually from like an artist naming one of her albums after Mary Magdalene. And I knew a little bit about the heart-centered consciousness, but I always confused Mary the Virgin with Mary Magdalene. And my partner and I went to visit some friends one time. It was like the first time we visited them. And for whatever reason, she recommended me reading this book called The Magdalene Manuscript. And I was like, okay. And I love reading. I love a good book recommendation. So the second she recommended a book to me, I was like, okay. So I sat and I read this entire book in one night at their house, and my mind felt like we have a masculine side of our body and a feminine side of our body. It felt like when I read this book, the feminine side of me, the veil had been lifted, and I was finally seeing something that has been purposefully shrouded and clouded from collective consciousness for a purpose and for a reason. I read this book, which is essentially someone who had connected with Mary Magdalene and been speaking with her and channeled a large part of her history, a large part of who she was and what she did and how she came to know Yeshua, Jesus Christ. The most controversial part of this entire book, and what most people who believe what I believe, is that Mary Magdalene was the sacred partner, the sacred lover of Yeshua, and that they were together in a holy matrimony. That they were the divine feminine and the divine masculine come together in unconditional, abundant love. And reading the Magdalene Manuscript, it wasn't like I was reading something that was hard to believe. It felt like I was remembering when I was reading it. That I was like, oh yes, this makes sense. Like pieces were fitting that I couldn't figure out where they went. I read that and I sat with that for some time. I want to say at least a year before I had just purchased this book last October, The Magdalene Mysteries, because I had been wanting to work more with her and hadn't really had the time and space to. And when I started living with my mom, I was like, I want to spend this winter reading some books. I want to spend the winter going within. And I digested this book so deeply and so quickly that it's a book that I'll continue to reference. But one of the major things in the book that it speaks about with Mary Magdalene is the fact that the baptism, the act of baptism, is about going into the waters of the feminine. It's about the baptism of your former self being washed in the waters of healing, restorative, feminine womb space. The waters of the womb. The baptism is about going back into the womb, the origin point of you before you came out here into this earthly realm. It's about going back into that womb space, recentering, realigning with the core, true you, who you are, outside of all the programming, all the trauma, all the harsh words, all the expectations, everything on your life that has changed who you are, and you come out of that water renewed, and you get to begin again. That, to me, the way it was expressed in the book, I can never express to you how much is in this book. But one of the major things that I believe is that Mary Magdalene was the divine partner, the sacred partner to Yeshua. Not even like outside of reading the book, even when the whole thing about Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, where their actual heads, if you transpose them, are leaned on each other, outside of like a lot of people claiming that she's the first disciple of Christ, that like there are so many layers that I could highlight that I've found, like there being 12 disciples, but Mary Magdalene would be the 13th. The 13 was considered an evil number because it was representative of the feminine, because there used to be a 13 moon cycle that regulated women's menstrual cycles with the moon, which would be 13 months of 28 days equally. 13 was representative of the feminine. Friday was Venus Day. Freya Day was associated with the feminine, became Friday the 13th, which was considered a bad day. There are so many things that were being implemented into this structure here to tell us that woman was bad and wrong and sinful, because they're trying to keep away the truth that the divine feminine and masculine coming together is one of the most powerful things we can do. And that has been more evident to me every time I do get to reconnect with my partner and we both learn to honor the differences in one another and work together. That's just a side note. So I believe that. I don't doubt that. And to add to this story and to why I'm even speaking about this testimony of how much has changed for me since being baptized. I got baptized on January 20th, 2024, the day Pluto moved into Aquarius, the water bearer, Pluto in the water bearer, not just the waters, but pouring out consciousness. Like the timing of it couldn't have been more perfect. But the reason that I even decided to get baptized was because, first off, I didn't know I wasn't, and I sat with it. I sat with it over October, November, December, and I think it was the beginning of January. I was like asking Spirit, I was like, do I need to get baptized, or is it just like, do I need to wait? Is it not the right time? But I kept hearing it and feeling it in me. And so I asked Spirit, like I typically do, I said, okay, well, show me, like, if I'm supposed to get baptized today, I will know in church today. I will feel it somehow. And we were in church that Sunday, and they're like, we're doing baptisms in 2 weeks. If you feel called, if you want to be baptized in the waters of Christ, then sign up. And I was like, there's my sign. And my mom didn't know, my sister didn't know. I felt called to sign up, and I told them I'm going to get baptized. They were very surprised. They're like, you're getting? I was like, yep. I explained to them, like, I've been feeling called to do it. I've been sitting with it. I asked for a sign today. I got the sign. And I think they were both very surprised by that because of the things that I believe in. I'm someone who is able to blend opposing parts of myself and allow it to align within me as my truth. I don't think, like, I can believe in angels speaking to me, and I can believe in Yeshua, Christ, and Mary Magdalene. I can believe in angel numbers and like connecting to your chakras, and I can also pray, and like I don't think those things exist outside of one another. So sometimes it's hard for people to grasp that. So I signed up for the baptismal, and on the day of, for the like 3 or 4 days beforehand, I hear the call to fast. I'll wait for a second for the sound. I have to actually, I'm gonna let Thor in really quick. He looks hot. Hold on. You wanna go inside? Okay, so I fast for like 3 or 4 days before. I'm only drinking water and eating salt. And I was told to do that. I heard the call to do that, to purge and cleanse out things in my body that did not need to be present for my baptismal. And it was really hard. The last day of my fast, I thought I was gonna die, which doesn't sound like it makes any sense, but it could have also been Pluto moving out of Capricorn into Aquarius. That was all happening in my first house of my body. And it was rough. It was a rough night before my baptismal. I felt weak. I felt like maybe a lot was coming out of me. And the day of, we go in, and there's a man and a woman who give us our shirts that we're supposed to wear. They're talking to us about what it means to be baptized and like asking if we have any questions and whatnot. And as we are leaving to go stand and wait in line, my husband comes, because he comes to be present for my baptism. We're standing in the front, and I just have my hand on my heart and I have my hand on my womb, because I wanted to make it very clear to myself as my own personal vow that I was going to honor the Christ-centered heart consciousness and the womb-centered Mary Magdalene embodiment expression. And so I had my hands here, and I was just praying and connecting and like just calling to angels, calling to Yeshua and Mary Magdalene to be with me. And the man who had spoken to all of us comes over to me, and I can't remember it word by word because I was just amazed he was even saying this, but he comes over to me and he says, when you first came in, well, he told my mom this, which she told me later, but the thing he told me, and then I'll tell you what he told my mom. He came over to me and he said, I feel the call of John on you. And he was like, I see you being like the hand on the breast of Christ, and that being something you're called to do here. I feel that for you. You're being asked to step into that. Like, he was like, basically he was hearing this and came and told me. He's like, you're being called to be like the hand on the breast of Christ, like John. And I was like, John the Baptist? Like, I've only known about John the Baptist. Anyway, I go into the water, I'm praying, I feel my angels, I feel Yeshua and Mary there, I make sure they're there with me, and I go under the water and I come out and I'm crying. It's like something you can't explain. It's just, it does make a difference. It does change you, especially when there's intention, especially when you're connected, especially when you're praying, especially when you know why you're doing it. So I come out, I'm crying, I feel like a baby, honestly. I leave out, and later on my mom tells me, she's like, the guy who, I told her the guy came and spoke to me, and she's like, he told me that when he saw you come in, he saw a huge light around you, and he just sensed that there was something going on with you. I was like, oh, he didn't tell me that. She's like, yeah, he told me there's a light around your daughter. I don't know. And then I guess later on he received like what the message was, and then he came and told me. And then I told her what he told me, and she said, oh yeah, I've heard someone say that about you before. And I looked over at her again, like the same moment where I'm like, oh, isn't it nice I'm baptized? You're not baptized. I'm like, what? Now I'm having this exact same moment. She's like, oh yeah, someone said that about you before. And I look at her and she was like, when you were like 9 or 10, we were going to the church, in Hampton, the big one. I was like, yeah. She's like, this guy came over and he said, your daughter has a very unique countenance about her. She said he used the word countenance. It's like, your daughter has a very unique countenance about her. And she was like, yes, I know. He's like, yeah, she's very different. He said, I'm hearing, and at that church it was very common for people to be able to just kind of like channel and use prophetic word. He said, I'm getting this feeling she's being called to be like John, like on the hand of the breast of Christ, like the same thing. And I was like, why didn't you ever tell me this? She's like, I don't know. She's like, I had a feeling it wasn't time to tell you yet, so I just never did. I was like, I feel like that would have been beneficial for me to know throughout all of my teenage and 20s that someone had said something like that, but she didn't. But it hit different because she told me the day that this other guy told me. So I go down my little searchings of my rabbit holes because I'm thinking that they're both saying John the Baptist, which was Yeshua's cousin. I'm like, oh cool, I'm supposed to be like Yeshua's cousin. I'm like heart-centered. I'm supposed to be like that. And I'm looking in the Bible, and there's another John that I didn't know about. And John is like the most vague disciple. There's a book, the Book of John. And then it starts all coming together in my head because my husband was down in Florida back in 2020. He found a church that was happening on the beach. He was just walking down, and they all come to him, and they're like, read the Book of John. You need to read the Book of John. Read the Book of John. Now I'm realizing it's not John the Baptist, John the Baptizer, it's the actual Book of John. I had no idea. So I'm reading the Book of John, and I'm like noticing these things within it. And I'm like, this sounds like this isn't a man. This sounds like this is a woman. And then I had already watched The Chosen with my husband and his family, and had already noticed some things that they were trying to implement about Mary Magdalene that simply just weren't accurate. But we're all still kind of fighting the truth of what her role and her purpose was within Yeshua's life, even though it says that he kissed her on the mouth and that she was closer to him than anyone else. And like, we don't know what this means. We're just going to kind of wash over this. But the Bible has been rewritten many times with the feminine being taken out a lot. But I'm reading through the Book of John, and I'm realizing, oh, and I go on YouTube and I'm like, who wrote the Book of John? And like, what is this? And a lot of people on YouTube believe that the Book of John was actually written by Mary Magdalene, and that she had to guise her name in order for the book to be put in. So then I'm like, they're telling me to be like John, who he was closest to Christ, had his hand on the breast of God, also maybe the person who kissed him on the mouth. They're telling me I'm supposed to be like him, And then I'm looking at this book of John, and I'm finding out a lot of people think that Mary Magdalene wrote it. So what they were both really telling me was to be like Mary Magdalene. What is it to be like Mary Magdalene? What is it to be heart-centered and womb-centered and connected to your divinity, your spirituality, your feminine essence, your feminine gifts, your feminine power in a world that doesn't want you to do that? Maybe in a world that's kind of resistant to that, especially when you are combining it with a divine partner, a divine lover. Imagine, if you will, just open your mind, open your curiosity, open just the wonderment of life. Imagine this is like a scene in a movie. Imagine, if you will, that Yeshua and Mary Magdalene were together in a holy union, a sacred love that when coming together made them stronger. Coming together filled two parts of one, both wholes coming together and becoming even stronger. The divine expression of God, of universe, of source. Man and woman coming together creates life. It creates a child. It's the spark of life. Imagine them coming together and all that may have unfolded because they were together. But it was kept secret because the power of two people coming together in love, unconditional love and support, can change so many things in our world. There's been so much in our world that wants us to become numb to connection, that wants us to feel that we're just meant to like go through people, go through tons and tons of trauma, instead of taking the time to come to our own heart, our own womb, and honor ourselves, connect with ourselves, realize our own divinity, that we are children of God, that we are holy and pure, and that when coming together with the opposite of us, that those two opposing forces create an energy all their own that can allow you to recognize the God in someone else, because we all have God within us, and coming together to create more of that aspect of God in a world that wants us to be sinners, in a world that wants us to sin, in a world that wants us to be sad, in a world that wants us to be depressed, in a world that wants us to feel lost, in a world that wants us to drink, in a world that wants us to do drugs, in a world that doesn't want us to remember we're all children of God and we can come together in holy matrimony. All of this was starting to unfold for me after my baptism, and I'm still currently trying to realize and understand what it means to be like Mary Magdalene. What it means for all of us to technically, in some way, shape, or form, be a descendant of Mary Magdalene and Yeshua. At some point, some blood somewhere has a thin fractal vein. We're all of God, so we all have this within us to tap into. I'm still learning what that means, and for me, it's just learning to have more of that sacred heart, to have compassion and grace and understanding even when it's easy to just judge, and to connect more to my womb, which isn't always easy to do, especially if there's trauma there, to connect to my femininity, to connect to Gaia, the earth, the life giver here for us, and combining the Heavenly Father with the earthly mother. It's brought out a lot for me. It's brought a lot to me to be baptized. A lot was brought to me during the day of my baptism that I wasn't looking for. It came to me and confirmed to me something that no one else can disprove to me. I believe that Mary Magdalene and Yeshua were lovers, that they were here to try and go to others and teach others the power of love, which Christ did. The power of love, the power of the sacrament, the power of the Holy Grail, the power of the blood and the bread being the blood of the feminine, the bread of the body of man. Like, there are so many things that make more sense to me when I allow my mind to open up to the womanly side and the manly side. Not just a man, not just Yeshua, a man and a woman. A man and a woman coming together, going around spreading love and letting people know the power of that, and not thinking that they need some external masculine force outside of them to tell them anything, is powerful. It's crazy. And I wanted to talk about it because it's been a while now. It's now May, and I got baptized in January, and these last months have been feeling like I've been a baby and really trying to figure out what life means for me after baptism, what it is I wish to be like after baptism, what it is I wish to do, how I want to express myself, what I want to embody. And when I think about Mary Magdalene and Yeshua, it takes me back to a time before this time. It takes me back to before cars, before buildings, just people walking across the earth, connecting with God all day, and understanding the power of love and how that can transcend and overcome anything else if we allow it to. And it's not always easy, and a lot in our life will want us to do the opposite. And to kind of close this out, if any of you have watched The Matrix, which if you haven't, you definitely should, the whole point of Neo becoming aware and awake to the world that he was in and realizing, oh, I'm like feeding into like this program, I'm feeding into this matrix that I don't want to. I don't want this life, I don't want this timeline. And realizing that he was plugged in, like, and actually becoming awake and aware of like, oh my gosh, I'm just being used for my energy, and like freaking out. I don't want to give away too much. A lot of the source of his power as he continues through the movies isn't just that he realizes how powerful he is as a child of God, is what I'll say, how powerful he is being aware and awake and knowing the power he holds, but a lot of it comes down to the fact that him and Trinity, the Holy Trinity, Father, Mother, Husband, Father, Mother, Father, Father, Mother, Father, them coming together was what made them even more powerful. It wasn't just Neo alone, it was Neo and Trinity. And that has kind of played out for me as well. It's not just Yeshua, it's Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. And that doesn't take away anything from what Yeshua did, and it never could. And I just feel that Mary Magdalene has been so forgotten for a reason, for a purpose. And it's going to take people talking about her just to even open up her name again. Like, I remember when I first started talking about Persephone, when my channel name used to be Palace of Persephone. And after I named it that, I was like, I just want to bring her name more out into like the open. I started seeing her name everywhere, and she started popping up everywhere. So I feel like there was a channel name that I had that I was trying to grow called Magdalene Core. And I realized that I didn't need to hyper focus on her name, but more about just remembering and honoring her and how I am here on earth and what I can do for others here on earth. And it's been such a blessing to be able to call to Yeshua and to call to Mary Magdalene and to pray to both of them and hear the masculine advice and the feminine advice, to have that fatherly principle and that motherly principle to come together and to assist me has made a huge difference. And I feel that sharing this can make a huge difference for someone else, or even just open your mind. Like I said, you don't have to agree. I'm not forcing you to agree. I'm just sharing my truth and my experience. And it's definitely changed my perspective. It's changed the way that I look at things, the kaleidoscope of life. And I'm really grateful for it. And I feel that Mary Magdalene will continue to become more talked about, more things will be revealed in the future. But if there's any lesson that we can receive from her, especially because I just had an experience with someone yesterday, just out with my husband, her name was Mary Lynn. And I said, oh, that reminds me of Mary Magdalene. And she's like, you know, my husband said that he saw her hovering over me in bed one night. And I was just like, it's not, there's no coincidences. I feel that her essence and what she embodies will continue to grow, and we'll continue to learn, or to continue to remember the power of coming together as a man, as a woman, as a masculine, as a feminine, in love, in harmony, in unconditional reverence for the other, for God within us, so that we can all hold a frequency of that and not feed into the programming that they want us to feed into. Yeah. If you feel the call, sorry, these locks are bothering me. If you feel the call to get baptized, if you're feeling that call, listen, answer it, sit with it. I didn't realize how much it would affect me. I knew it was important. I didn't realize everything that would echo out from that moment. And it has been intense, but definitely worth it. So thank you so much for listening to my little baptism story, my walk with Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. Thank you for being open to hearing my perspective on this world and life. And I'm always open to hear others as well. As always, I'm sending you peace. I'm sending you love.